Hi everyone, welcome to this lesson. Today we are going to talk about HTML styles and HTML and CSS styles. So right now, HTML style attribute is used to add styles to an element, such as color, font size, and many more. So what are attributes? Attributes can be found within an element. So let's go on. Let's create a bit tag and let's write this, like, let's say this is a paragraph, and let's try to style here. So attributes are written inside a tag. So once you open up a space here and say style, you see Emmet recognize it as a what? Style attribute. So all we need to do here is we need to say, for example, let's give our content a red color. Let's say color, let's say red. So as you may notice, we are using colon and we are using semicolon, right? So what that does is the color here is the property, while the red here is the value, while this style here is what? The attribute. So I'm going to go ahead and say HTML style, then I'm going to say attributes. I'm going ahead to comment this. Let me rerun my live server so that it will be updating automatically. So I will still do a recap. This style here is the attribute, this color here is what? The property, and this red here is the value. So this column here actually gives or tells CSS that this is the end of this statement. You can as well say background dash color should be maybe yellow. Alright, so as you can see, it's taking effect here. So what that does is we are adding a bit style within our what? HTML element. So we'll still come up on HTML style CSS. Alright, so this works on any element, most of the elements. We can also say tag name, or we can create a H1, right? You can create a H1 and say this is my heading, and as well add a little style within the tag by introducing our attribute, which is what? Style. We can go ahead to give it a color. You can say color should be, let's say, orange. Then we can say font size, font dash size should be, remember we noted that the default font size is usually 16 pixel, which is times 2, that is 2m, giving us 32 pixel. So we can actually say that's by default the browser is seeing this is my heading, that is our H1 as 32 pixel, which is 2M. So now we can actually say 40 pixel, right? You see that it increases the size of our heading. You can as well say 80 pixel just to see the action. All right. So I noticed that my codes are a bit tiny, so I'm going to increase it a bit. I'm going to zoom in a bit. Cool. I think this is better. So if you notice from here, whatever font size we give our text, the result appears. So let's leave it at 40. You can go on and on to add more styles you want within the HTML elements. Alright. So let's do a recap for this. We also have font family, text align, and the rest. You can go on and on. You can also say text dash align. You can align it maybe to center. As you can see, it's taking effect. You can align it maybe to left. Already is on left by default, so you can align it maybe to right. Alright, so let's leave it as default. So the next thing we are going to talk about is the HTML styles CSS. What does that mean? Let's introduce CSS here, because since we have started talking about styles. So what is CSS? CSS simply means cascading style sheet. Although this lesson is still on HTML, but I want to talk a bit on CSS. So CSS simply means cascading what? Style sheet, which is used to format the layout of a web page. With CSS, you can control the website colors, font size. It just has to generally do with the beautification on a web page. Alright, so we have three methods of using CSS, right? We have our inline style, we have the internal and the external. So those are the three basic ways of using CSS in our web page. So what we just did here now is known to be inline styling, right? Let me write it very well for reference purposes. So we have CSS can be added to HTML documents in three ways, right? Number one, we have our inline style. And just say inline. 2, we have internal, and 3, we have external. So I'll go ahead to comment this. So from the beginning, we started with inline style, right? Inline style simply means introducing an attribute. Remember, we noted that attribute is style, right? And I want to also point something. When I say attribute is style, it doesn't mean it's static. Like anything within a tag element is considered as what? Attribute. I can come here now and say class, right? Para. So this class here also is considered to be what? An attribute. So attributes are always within what? The tag, the HTML tag. Alright. So let's talk about internal style. Remember, we are done with inline style. Inline style simply means styling your file or your document within what? The HTML tags. So let's talk about internal style, internal CSS. Okay. So internal CSS can be done within the header. Okay. Remember when I talked about nested elements? So internal CSS can be done within what? The header. So we can come from here and create our style tag. It's usually like this. So for instance, we choose not to style, or let's create a new one. Let's leave this for reference as it is for internal, sorry, for inline. Let's just say this is inline CSS. Let's just say this is inline CSS. Okay. So let's do a little internal CSS. All right. So now to do internal CSS, all we need to do is, first of all, an internal CSS is used to define a style for single HTML page. An internal CSS is defined within what? The head section, like I explained earlier. All right. So let's write something. Let's open up a paragraph and say testing internal CSS. Okay. Maybe let's leave it on the H2 so that we'll see clearly. H2. So testing internal CSS. So now, for us to be able to utilize or write internal CSS, all we need to do is we need to assign a class or ID. So assigning a class or ID, or assigning something within this tag, this HTML tag, simply means an attribute. So we have to assign an attribute called class, right? Let's say class header underscore 2, right? So all we need to do is we have to call this class we are using within our style, and we have to begin the property with dots. Once you have assigned with class, you have to begin with the property with dot. That's period. So what is the name of our class? The name of our class is header underscore 2, right? So now you need to open, then start styling within this gap. Okay, so we can actually style, we can actually give it a color red. All right, as you can see, it's taking effect from our browser. It's giving us an output. We can as well give it we can as well say font family, maybe to change the font family. You can use any of this font family. Let's use impart. All right, so as you can see, this is impart. You can as well say font size. You can as well say font size. You can say 40 pixel. All right, so I actually don't like this this font family. So another thing I want to teach you guys is, if you notice, when we removed the font family here, which is the value, we are not getting any suggestion, right? So now a trick to that is hold your control and touch spacebar. It will give you an option, a VS option. Visual Studio Code will generate this option back. Normally, while writing font family, you get this option. But scenario where you didn't see this option, the key to this is control space. Okay, so I'm going to use Times New Roman. I think this is better. So this is how we do our internal CSS, and this is our inline CSS. So talking about external CSS. External CSS simply means, or is an external style sheet that is used to define the style for many HTML pages. Remember, this internal CSS here can only define a particular word HTML page or web page, right? It can only define a particular word or style a particular word web page. So for example, if you are creating multiple pages, like about us page, the home page, the about us, the contact us, the services, or whatever, you only utilize internal CSS for each particular page on your document. You cannot style multiple pages. But when you are using external CSS styles multiple pages, and external CSS, the code can also be written within your the header. I will show you that. Let's say external CSS. All right, I'm going to comment this. So to link up our external CSS, you have to say link, right, link rel equals to style sheet. So href. So this is going to be the source of your style sheet. There is a way you can actually get it from using emit, you see. So it's actually the same thing. You can type it, or you can actually use emit. Okay, but I will advise you to actually type this on your own so that you practice and perfect everything as we are following along. So this href simply means the location and the name of what your CSS that you defined externally. All right, so for example, if I have a style sheet with a name style.css, I have to declare it here within my folder, my website folder. All right, so I'll talk a little on this. Before you start creating a website, you need to first of all create a folder and give it the name of the website you want to create. Then within those folder, that folder has to constitute all your document pages your HTML codes and your whichever language you want to use, your HTML, your CSS, your PHP, your JavaScript. So that document folder has to be your website folder, which we also call the root folder. Okay, so that being said, I think we'll end it here. See you in the next one.